So at this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Barris to share video. Hi there.
Hello.
Hope everybody enjoyed that nice break. I want to welcome all of you to session 3, potentially the most important session of this whole meeting. We're really excited to have an hour dedicated to patient stories and discussion. So we have some fantastic guest speakers, and I'm going to introduce Dr. Barris, who will introduce our first speaker. So as some of you already know, Dr. Barris is a faculty at Stanford. I've had the pleasure and honor of working with her and sharing some patients and as well as collaborating on research. She's an expert in pediatric and adult neuro-ophthalmology and truly just the perfect doctor for optic disc Drusen patients as well as research.
Great. Well, thank you, Dr. Liao. I've been really excited for this session because I have such a special family and patient to share with you guys today. So I want to ask Tammy to turn her video on. There she is. Hi, Tammy.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Welcome.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Not in the clinic. My goodness.
I know.
It's rare to see people outside of the clinic. So thank you for joining us today. So I want to introduce Tammy. She's a mother of 2 of my patients. As Dr. Liao said, I'm a pediatric neuro-ophthalmologist, so I see mainly pediatric patients. And Tammy's been a warrior in parenting 2 teen girls that I've had the honor of watching grow in my clinic in many, many ways, mostly in height, I'd have to say, since they are now towering over me, both of them. But her daughters have been ideal patients. They've been following everything I've ever asked of them, especially when I'm not quite certain about some of the answers to their questions about optic disc Drusen. And I certainly thank Tammy for being here today to share her story. In the audience, we should have some patients who have optic disc Drusen, as well as a scientific community that we've been working with. And I want to thank Tammy because she is here to share her story of how optic disc Drusen has played a role in her life as well as her daughters. And her daughters, both Abby and Cassidy, are currently enrolled in our optic disc Drusen study here at Stanford. And I personally consider them champions for all that they have done with trying to move forward the information we have on optic disc Drusen. And ultimately to help other people in the future who are going to be diagnosed with this so that we'll maybe one day have a treatment or maybe a cure. So I'll turn to Tammy's story. I just want to sincerely thank you for being here today. This is quite special to have this opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you.
So the story that I'll introduce because I know the medical side to it. So I first met Abby when she was 13 years old. And you were very much in the throes of dealing with Abby's eye and headache problems. And I'll take you back 3 years before that when she was 10 years old. When she was 10, she was seen by an outside pediatric ophthalmologist because she was having trouble with blurred vision and she was having quite a bit of headaches. At that doctor's appointment, she was found to have what they called papilledema, which is swelling behind her eyes. And she was then, of course, it was alarming to everybody. She was urgently sent for a brain MRI. And similar to what happens when we send for people for images, unfortunately, there was another finding, which was this either a cyst or a brain maldevelopment. But at that point, they couldn't rule out that this wasn't a tumor in her brain. So she was then urgently sent to neurosurgery and to child neurology. She had a lumbar puncture at the time, and it was normal. She was put under anesthesia for this. And at that time, they said, well, we don't think this is a tumor. We are not sure what this is, but we think it's pseudotumor cerebri syndrome, also what we call idiopathic intracranial hypertension. So at this point, your daughter had been through an MRI. She'd had anesthesia for a lumbar puncture. You'd seen a neurologist, an ophthalmologist, a neurosurgeon. You were told everything's sort of coming out fine, except for the fact that she has this sort of funny thing in her brain that we weren't sure what it was. And there was a lot you had to process. So I wanted to hear from your side. What was it like what did it feel like processing all this information? And what was your biggest fear at this time?
Thank you, Dr. Barris. Fear was, is this tumor cancerous, or what does this hold for my daughter? What is their vision loss? Can it be reversible? When I did my own little research, I thought she doesn't fit the description of that, but what does that look like? Her headaches were very much affecting her daily life and her school life, which was hard. She's an avid reader, always wanted a book, and just didn't have the interest anymore, which was very discouraging, because it just really affected her in the long run. Wanting to know, is there, how are we going to fix, how do we fix her? I'm a fixer. I want to know how to fix her. So I need somebody that's going to fix this so that she can go back to being that happy little girl who loved to read and was a great student in school. So just kind of a roller coaster. With every turn, it was up, it was down. It was summer. We had just moved into our new home, and things were just turning at every twist. So there were a lot of appointments. The MRIs, trying to explain to her at 10 years old, what does this look like? I can't be with you. And then knowing that she's going to have these lumbar punctures. And I thought, my gosh, when I had when I had to have something in my back, I had a baby and I get to come home with it. Now she's going to get a poke in her back and she doesn't even get anything. So we got some ice cream on the way home, but that was about all I could do. And as mom who wants to fix it, I just was like, I got to fight. I need better answers. The doctors that we were with I felt were good, but there wasn't, I felt that there was probably more technology. There was more that was out there. They were doing it all by, them looking, and I couldn't see anything, and I couldn't see the changes. I just had to go off of the doctor's observations herself. And that was frustrating. And so I needed more. I needed more.
Absolutely. I think a roller coaster is a perfect way to explain it. And unfortunately for Abby, this roller coaster continued. So I think at that point she was started on Diamox because she had high pressure, and she ended up, her headaches got a little bit better, but she had so many side effects similar to what some other patients might be experiencing on the Diamox. And Abby ended up having to stop it because of the side effects. So at this point, she was sort of unprotected, not on any medication, and they continued to follow her eyes. Things sort of stabilized a little bit, got maybe a little bit better actually in terms of the swelling. And then about a year later, she was 12 years old, she randomly passed out one day. And this sort of began the next roller coaster. She ended up in the emergency room. They found the optic nerves were swollen again, more than before. And she had another MRI, another lumbar puncture. And once again, they started her on Diamox, but she was having trouble with the side effects. So at this point, she had sort of other workup done too, but then I got to meet her at age 13. So this is 3 years later. She's had 3 lumbar punctures, 3 MRIs, a head CT. And when I first looked back there, we did have some of the technology in order to look at the back of the eye. And I thought that this was optic disc drusen, but I couldn't totally explain all of those swelling events where I could see the pictures that they actually got more swollen and got better at different intervals. So I thought maybe her headaches were unrelated to her eyes, and I thought maybe they could be migraines. And I think that sounded sort of bogus to you. Like, are you kidding me? She has these 2 problems. How could they be unrelated? So, I'm not sure at this point if when I said to you that these could be headaches unrelated, if this is welcome or unwelcomed information, and me telling you that this is optic disc drusen, that it's rocks behind the back of the eye, and that this maybe is not due to high pressure. I don't know if that was actually satisfying as a patient. You'd been through so much in the last year. So hard to all of a sudden come to somebody who tells you, it's none of those things you've been dealing with for 3 years. That's kind of a stark difference to the road you'd been on. I can imagine you thought I was kind of nuts, and you maybe didn't trust me at that time. So tell me what you were thinking at that point when you found out maybe this could be optic disc drusen and not the high pressure in her head or a brain tumor or a headaches related to a high pressure problem.
Hearing that the headache and the high pressure weren't related, that was hard to understand because everything seemed to happen together, and so that was hard to process. But then wondering, okay, so if these two are not related, so if she doesn't have this disease that may need a neurosurgical procedure and potentially threaten her vision rapidly, then that's a relief. But then what is optic drusen? What does that mean for her? Will she have vision loss? How long will it take for us to know if she will have any vision loss from this optic drusen? So, wanting to, of course, is that mom who wants to fix it, wanting those answers. It was good to be off the sprint pace. We feel very blessed. The day we met you, it was a wonderful appointment. My husband and I left feeling like we had finally found somebody who understood and was going to help us in that right direction. And in our terms, not necessarily fix, but had some answers that make us feel like this sprint wasn't happening, but it sounded like we were in for the long haul. So it turned into a marathon, and that was okay. We were very blessed that day, and we still are. That we have crossed paths with you, and you have been part of our life. You are definitely part of our family, and we are very blessed to have you, and both of my girls as well. We drive a long ways, and it's worth every bit of our drive to see you. You had said that we do not know that much about the optic disc drusen and how it behaves in this young age. So isn't it better to have the pseudotumor cerebri syndrome that we know how to treat? But yet, I think that's where that marathon started.
Exactly. And I think, so the story continues. 2 years later, I get to hear all about her 4-H animals that she's caring for, and she's growing taller. And then I get this call from Tammy 2 years later that essentially says, oh my gosh, her younger sister, who's 12, just went to the optometrist, and she has the exact same optic nerve swelling. Tammy was much more calm this time because there was potential that this could be optic disc drusen, but the younger daughter also had headaches. So I'm still sounding sort of like a nut that no, they're not related. So this was also unexpected, Tammy. So tell me what was going through your mind that day when you called me and said, oh my gosh, Cassidy has the same problem.
How is it that I was blessed with 2 girls, but how is it that they can both have the same thing? I guess the biggest blessing, again, and I can't say enough, is that we had you. And so that was crucial. That helped me not freaking out and helped me not go down that path. But yes, I did. I called you like, are you kidding me? I can have 2 of them. So, okay, I always said they were unique, but this was a little extreme. So thinking it's probably the optic disc drusen, I was feeling like I was not an expert, but I at least knew a little bit. Didn't want to completely freak out, but thought, how can there be 2? And I remember asking you, are you really 2 of them? How do I have 2? And so then that was when, my husband have it, do I have it? Or these, how is this? It just seemed like we were we were kind of an odd show.
Yeah. And so at that time, Cassidy then I brought her in, I think within like the week. I was like, don't go anywhere else, please. Don't go to the emergency room. Let me see her first. Yep. And I brought her into clinic, and she also had very similar appearance to her optic nerves, actually even more swollen than Abby's. And I did the OCT that we have talked about with the scientific meeting before we had this session. And you could see the optic disc drusen. So with all the other patients that have gone through this, we do a visual field. And Cassidy, unfortunately, had some visual field loss. And this was reproducible, and it still is today, exactly in the same area that she's had vision loss since she was 13. Or since we discovered it then. So Cassidy's now 16. And what have you discussed with the girls, especially Cassidy, about her vision and what might happen to her in the future. How do you deal with that, having teenage girls who have optic Drusen with a disease that's potentially threatening of vision down the line?
We just kind of, again, are thankful to have you. And, we got constantly communicating, making sure that she has whatever resources available to her that she can have. She has a 504 accommodation plan at school, an education or a health one, which allows, some accommodations if she needs it. The same with my other daughter. She is 16. They both have them. And then figuring out how does this vision loss affect, school? And is the vision loss going to continue? At one point, I had heard that they could be completely blind. So we try to stay optimistic and make sure that I have every resource that I can give them available. Wondering in the future, will there be a treatment? That is why we, are hoping that we are part of this optic Drusen study at Stanford. We hope to learn more about the disease so we can maybe find a treatment, in my daughter's lifetime. I don't wish this upon any parents. Having one child is a challenge, and two, you start to feel like a little bit. On number two, you're not as broad-sided as number one. So I'm not saying it was a blessing, but was a little better round two. I feel a little bit more comfortable, but yet number two doesn't present the same as number one. Number one doesn't have that vision loss, whereas my second daughter does.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to kind of turn towards the genetic part to this, because that's what's I think so special about having you as a patient, is watching this through the family and then wondering, how far does the net spread in terms of other people in your family with this? And we've enrolled you in the genetic study that we're running here at Stanford. So I think you have hit the most amount of spit kits that you sent to as many family members as you possibly can. So I thank you for that.
You deserve a trophy.
You get a total trophy for that.
Most
exactly.
spit trophy.
We've got a lot of Central California spit here. So what have been the discussions with your family members about this, and saying, hey, my two daughters have this problem. Have you guys seen an eye doctor? What have they thought about this maybe being linked through hereditary, through the family, also known as sort of a genetic cause?
They have all been definitely are the strength behind all of this process and the steps that we've been through. They're all, very much aware, and with technology the way it is, they've always received updates when we leave Stanford. Everyone knows we're at Stanford. So that's been, when I reached out and asked for the spit test, I went pretty overboard, but, my goal being, where did this come from? Again, what are the chances? If my husband and I don't have it, then somebody else has to have it. And as much as I'd like to bring them all to you and put them all through all those machines, if the spit test is the best we can do, then that's what we'll do. I think wondering, how is this gonna, what is it gonna tell us to help generations of, my family as well as others? And will this explain the vision problems we've had in other family members? I know that there's definitely vision problems on both sides of the family. And so I'm curious to see if that, were those indicators, were those things that now we look back and think, oh, okay, that was what it like. I remember visiting with my husband's grandmother, and she had this, oh my gosh, we're talking 30 years, probably 30 years ago. And she had this huge machine, and she had to put her book underneath it, and it magnified it, and she could only see like 3 lines at a time. And I thought, holy smokes, who wants to sit through this? But that was the only way she could read, whether it be the newspaper, whether it be a book, a card from somebody. And I remember meeting her for the first time and seeing this big machine, and I was just like, what in the world? And so I mean, I have my own questions, because she has the most severe loss in both sides of our family, but curious to see what lies ahead.
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of excitement about whether, what the genetics are behind this. And I think that those will be very helpful for families like yours. So I want to wrap it up, but I want to thank you, Tammy, for sharing this personal reflection of what your family has been through. It certainly has been a roller coaster. I think you said it well. Every family has their own story, and there are other families here on the call and the Zoom meeting. But yours sure has been drawn out over years, multiple children, and you also had to do a bunch of things on repeat multiple times. So I want to thank you again. Hearing these stories are so motivating for us in the scientific field to keep working hard for families like yours in hopes of learning more, sharing more, and ultimately preventing or fixing this vision-threatening disorder. So Tammy, you can go ahead and turn off your video and your microphone. And I want to turn this over to Dr. Liao so we can hear more from other patients. But once again, my sincerest thanks to you, Tammy.
So
Thank you,
I think you can still hear me, Tammy. I just want to let you know that you mentioned earlier how you're a fixer. Well, I totally know where you're coming from. I'm a mom as well. And I see the amazing resilience that you have and your family has, and the determination you have to pretty much help us fix this thing. I think the genetic studies are probably going to be one of the biggest breakthroughs in the field. Literally, this condition's been basically known for over 150 years, and there's so many questions, fundamental questions that we still haven't answered. And so I just really appreciate your contribution and all the spit.
And Tammy, there are questions in the question and answers. So we're going to speak to one other family. And then after that, we will answer all these questions. We'll have about 30 minutes to talk with Tammy again. So please do write in the question and answer for questions for both Dr. Liao, myself, and for Tammy and our next patient. So thank you, Tammy. Stay on board for when we call you back.
I will be here.
Perfect. So at this time, I want to invite Tracy to share her video. Hi there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, and Tracy, I think you wanted to read a statement that but feel free to share whatever is on your mind.
Absolutely. So first, Tammy, you're such an inspiration. Our daughter was just diagnosed with Drusen in November of 2020. Actually, she's 7 years old, so really on the young side. Attending first grade, and she really has no awareness of what's going on. So she does have a peripheral vision loss, which is a bit shocking to us. I think all of this is a bit shocking to us. It really came completely out of nowhere. Just within 1 year, it was unpredicted, or it was undetectable. And now it's grown and manifested even just from her eye exam in November to just April. The Drusen has grown drastically. So she has been prescribed the eye drops, and we understand some of that is more experimental. There's no data behind it. We have not fully, I think, gotten our minds into moving that step forward just yet, until we go and see her doctor again. But obviously, just scared for the future. What does this mean? All the same questions that Tammy just walked through. I can totally relate to a lot of that. So this and finding this group and this network, I'm on the East Coast, our family's on the East Coast, but just in doing a lot of research and that digging, I was able to find your group. And so my husband and I, we really want to network, join families, hear about family stories, and hopefully find a cure with all of you and stay front of mind. But hearing Tammy speak, it really resonated with me. So thank you for sharing your story as well, Tammy.
There were a couple of things I wanted to ask you. So one is the fact that things seem to be accelerating pretty quickly. I guess in a way, kind of like what happened to Tammy originally. Dr. Barris talked about how the early teenage years and in your case, certainly even younger, being a time of change, I guess, in so many ways.
Yes.
I wonder, in terms of moms like you, dads like your family, do you think there's a better way that we could support you? Like, what would be a optimal, like, what would you like,
Absolutely.
from the doctors?
Absolutely. I mean, we are going to one of the top doctors on the East Coast here, from what I've been told and in all of our research. So definitely trust the doctors that she's in. We certainly would love at some point to get you those images, to get you maybe some of those reports when you have the electronic record transfer, to be able to help with a lot of your studies, and partake in some of that, even though we can't physically be there. We want to do what we can do to release some of that to help studies and the imaging and everything that may potentially help you in the future.
Fantastic. Yeah. And then my other question is about the eye drop. This is particularly challenging in kids because there's a very high percentage of altered mental status as a side effect of this eye drop, even when it's just, tiny eye drops into the eyes.
Right.
And so I think certainly in some adults, it's kind of like a no-brainer. Well, probably okay. You just try it, couldn't hurt, right? But in kids, it's particularly challenging.
Correct. We're 50-50. So obviously the internet could be either your best friend or your worst enemy at times. It was some of the things that you read. So really just trying to go with our intuition right now and our gut feeling. And obviously just keeping close to our daughter and her vision. And she seems to not recognize any centralized or peripheral vision loss in her eye. So it is right now, from what we understand, in one eye. Her vision is 20/60 in the weaker eye, and she has 20/25 in her other eye. So we're hoping maybe just like Tammy, maybe it will plateau or just stay where it is. So the future, not knowing the future, certain vision loss going forward is certainly what scares us, I think, the most. But she went through a lot of the same tests, the lumbar puncture, MRI scans looking for MS and optical nerve inflammation and looking for MS bands and tons of blood work. And really just in her last visit, when they did the OCTs back in October, they saw the Drusen, and then they saw potential more growth in it just on April 10th visit as well. So.
Well, certainly one of the most important things will be to have a doctor that you could count on. So I'm so glad that you have that. And we're happy to help and answer any questions that we can. Definitely keep us in the loop. And I thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. If we can ever get a trip out there anytime soon, we would definitely participate in your clinic as well.
Fantastic.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Yeah, the pleasure is ours. So I guess at this point, maybe we'll invite Tammy back because there's a whole bunch of questions. I'll let Dr. Barris take over.
Great. So thank you so much, Tracy. It was wonderful to hear another family and the story that they've been through. One of the questions that's come up is you've mentioned I mentioned a bit earlier that we monitor pediatric patients a little bit different than adults because they sort of come on with this swollen nerve and it's angry. We don't know what it is. We're not sure if it's actually a brain tumor or if it's not, or if it's just high pressure or if it's Optic Drusen. So we do follow them a little bit more carefully than an adult because we know that this is a very dynamic time, that the Drusen are moving and growing, and we don't really know exactly what that means, but we know that there's changes. So I do follow them much more carefully every 4 months. I think Tammy, we were down to a month to 2 months in the beginning. And then we definitely start spacing it out to every 6 months to a year. And then once I feel comfortable, like with the oldest daughter of Tammy's, we wait a year. You can even wait 2 years until driving, because that's really when I want to know what's going on. then this gives you an opportunity to see if there's changes in their vision along the way. It sounds like between the two patients' families that we've had speak today, Tammy's family, they have some visual field loss, but nothing that's reached central vision. And there's not been any change to either of their vision over 4 or 5 years from the first daughter and the last 2 years from the second daughter. So we actually haven't moved forward with any treatment because there hasn't been any change. I don't know if there will ever be change, and that's the problem. Versus sounds like Tracy's daughter has vision loss already, and she's so young. She's just beginning that period of time where the drusen is starting and moving, which is where a lot of these experimental ideas kind of get put to patient clinical care. So one of the questions that was posed is there an intervention or a caution that you would implement for these kids when I have them come back right before they drive? And I don't think it's necessarily a caution other than, hey, I just want to see you back. I want to get a good visual field, because probably when they were 10, 11, 12, they weren't as good at taking the test. And then once they're good at taking the test, I feel it's a perfect time to figure out what their actual peripheral vision loss potentially or central vision loss potentially is. So there isn't any intervention I do unless they actually have central vision loss. And if they had central vision loss, then we certainly have things that we could talk about of treatments that people are experimentally using. But to me, it's really important to understand its potential that there is no change. And really that follow-up is important to get a sense of, is the OCT thickness of the back of the eye changing? Is the vision changing centrally? Is the visual field changing? And if it's not, we kind of continue that monitoring, watch and see picture. So I can look at some other questions. Anything else to comment on that, Joyce?
Nope, you did great.
This is a question for Tammy. At school, and Tammy is also in the school district. So tell us, what kind of accommodations can kids have in school? I know yours are specifically for the headaches, but what if somebody had severe vision loss from this? What kind of accommodations do you would you be able to talk about?
So I don't know if it's helpful or hinders. I am a special education teacher, so I am very well versed on accommodations and the laws and what governs special education, as well as the 504 accommodation plans. So in my daughter's case, I pretty much walked in and had the papers filled out and said, this is what you're going to do for them. So I'm happy to help anybody I can. So I think for the vision loss, the pieces, thinking about like Tracy's daughter and knowing first grade, being in the school, in the primary as well as middle school, accommodations being larger print, being the opportunity to now, with the way iPads are and the programs that are out there, we can scan their worksheets. They can appear on an iPad. They can write with a stylus. They can write with their fingers. It can be blown up, which is nice. So that helps as well. Blowing things up on the copy machines is not as wonderful as we would like to think it is. We're teachers or not, we do not take a copy machine class in college. And so we probably don't operate them the best, but I would think definitely getting materials in their hands. Sitting close is not always beneficial. In some cases, I think that, it's each child needs to sit where they're comfortable. If sitting close if she's a child who that would be helpful to, and she would like that, then I would definitely pursue it. I have one child who wants to be up in the front and center, and I have one who is my senior now, and she does not want, that was not something she wanted. She's like, that's not her personality. So I didn't push for that. I pushed for, and I still do, anything that's written on the board. Teachers either take a picture with your cell phone. I want it sent to me via email so that then I can print those notes. Trying to copy the notes is a challenge. Just understanding that spatial awareness between what's on the board, and we look at the board and then we have to tilt our head and write it on the paper. We're changing the plane that the kids are learning from. And so I want them to be able to watch and learn and listen, and we'll do the writing later. It's not a writing lesson. It's not a copying lesson. You're supposed to be learning from that material. And I think that when you have whether it be the headache or the vision loss, we need to take away the writing component and be able to hand them either the notes in advance. Kindergarten first grade, there's not, too much copying going on the board, but still there is ways that teachers can accommodate that and give her maybe a kind of a skeleton per se of that lesson, and then she just fills in the blank. So then that helps take away that stress on her eyes trying to see the screen and then put it on paper. So I think that those are probably the best pieces. Staying hydrated. There are some schools that you can't. You only have snack at snack time. No, my girls are able to have a snack when they feel they need the snack. I want them to be, taken care of from there's no hunger, there's no thirst. We can use the bathroom when we need to. Those are variables I can control. I can't control what's happening inside their brain, but I can control what happens on the outside. So I hope that answered your question. If not, I'll take another stab at it.
Tammy, that was great advice. My daughter will have an IEP for going into second grade with being closer to the front of the classroom, but I appreciate all that extra input. I will certainly take up on that with the school. So thank you.
And I think that knowing that she has an IEP, Tracy, you have a lot more leverage with that. So I'm very glad to know that she has qualified. I'm happy to hear that, so that she has that support. So that is great. So I hope that case manager is in direct contact. So that's wonderful.
Tammy, there's a question about a TVI, so a teacher for visually impaired. What do you know about that in terms of getting a teacher for visually impaired patients in your schools?
So I know that it's something that we reach if it's discussed. The child has it can just be a visual impairment, and so then in our district we have an outside contracted visual impairment teacher. They come onto campus and work with the students. I want to say weekly or biweekly, but I think that that's hard because they're only here a little bit of the time and they're working with the child, but yet as the specialist who is responsible for that caseload, I need to know what they're doing so that I can instill that on the times they're not there. I know that we have one child who is, they're working on just realize the lines that are at school on the ground, learning what those lines mean, understanding the sidewalks. And so he works with him on the climbing structures and such. So I just know that we refer out to it. I know that those people have access to the textbooks that are been printed in larger print, that those are accessible. Those are things that can be obtained and given to them. So their books look just like everybody else's. They're just much larger so that they can, enjoy that and feel that they're part of the class.
Exactly. And that's sort of been my experience too. I have a lot of relationships with at least in our local school districts, the vision teachers. And one of your daughters will be moving on to college and then moving on past that. So for any patients out there where we have adults who are interested, who have this disorder, there are other ways for having visually impaired services. At least here in California, accessing it through the California Department of Disabilities. There's other ways that you can get some access for both jobs, being job interviews, getting kind of help steered towards jobs that can be that are accessible to patients who have decreased vision. So there are quite a lot of things that people can do in the community locally where you guys are that you can access, but I would definitely start by looking into the Department of Disabilities in your area for the adults. There's also the colleges have phenomenal accommodation services as well for our kids who have visual field or visual central vision loss. So making sure that parents ask about services as they're looking at different colleges is important. So fortunately, Tammy's kids don't have the central vision loss, so we're not needing those types of services, but sounds like Tracy's daughter has had those concerns so far. So let me see here, the next question.
So actually, I want to introduce Anita, who has joined us. Anita is one of the first people to find us through the Optic Drusen Center website. And she comes from Canada, and she's also has revved up her whole family, who are incredibly supportive of our research. And we're hoping to meet you in person someday. Thanks to COVID, her original trip to travel from Canada to Palo Alto was delayed. And so hopefully we'll get to see you in person at some point. Welcome, Anita.
I just wanted to, just give my support to the other moms out here on the panel. I've had Drusen since my teens, I guess, and my brother has. My mother has it, my nephew has it, and now my daughter has it. So, and she's 13. So I've been reading up on Drusen for quite a few years now. And I just wanted to offer my support to stay positive. And I think it's just so amazing what Stanford is doing. I think I talk about it every day, just saying there's people working on it now. And, I just think that's really encouraging. And I just wanted to offer my support for that.
Yeah, thank you. And Anita is so enthusiastic that I think once we connected, she was willing to record a video. So she's famous as part of our website of patient stories. And I believe you also acquired a bunch of Stanford, sweatshirts.
We did. Oh yeah.
Literally our cheerleader. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.
Yeah.
Congratulations this year.
Yeah, and so just to comment, because Anita mentioned your family, being affected, and so we've actually collected quite a few SPIC kits from enough people that we're about to go and do our first round of whole exon sequencing. So this is basically sequencing every part of the DNA that's going to be made into a protein. So this is sort of a deep but good first approach to figuring out the first gene. So, I thank you. And
that's so great.
And others who are out there.
Of course, that's wonderful. So exciting.
It seems like the headaches have stimulated quite a bit of conversation, because I think it's like I said earlier in the scientific portion of this meeting, the headaches are a selection bias in that we get all these kids who have headaches, but they also, the reason why they had headaches is they went to an eye doctor, and then they looked, and then they found this Drusen, which we know can be in about 2% of the population. So if you think of how many people an optometrist sees, 2 out of 100 are going to have something like this. So the questions are, how can we be sure that optic Drusen is not connected to this disease? And we've had a couple people write in. One is a 61-year-old, and she says that she says that my optic Drusen vision loss is progressing. I've always struggled with headaches. Now I get a sudden sun-related headache if I'm not wearing a hat or even sunglasses. And then another one asks that there's been a lot of discussion about headaches and optic Drusen, and is this treated with standard pain medications? So there has been no data to support that headaches and optic Drusen are together. I don't think that there's good support for that, just theoretically why that would be the case. Although I would say that I am interested, because a lot of my patients do have headaches, although like I said, there's a selection bias there already. The headaches that patients will oftentimes, we try and find an answer for the headaches. So that's why kids oftentimes will go through a lot of a workup. They'll do a lumbar puncture, an MRI. Maybe when you're 61, you won't repeat those things because you've had them for so long that you sort of fit into a diagnosis of migraine headaches. And like I said in the story before, it kind of sound nuts to tell a patient, like, I think you just have headaches, you have migraines, and then your eyes are completely unrelated. Although I think that that's probably some truth to that, me being nuts, but also some truth that they're not related. How do we treat them? So what could they be? They're probably migraines. Migraines are exceptionally common in the population. And we treat them like migraines. So oftentimes I make sure that patients are with a pediatric neurologist or an adult neurologist, especially a headache specialist, to help treat the headaches. Tammy's oldest daughter, we've had a rough go at it in terms of headaches. I think we've tried every experimental medication that's out there for pediatric migraine treatment. And that's why actually Tammy's oldest daughter has gone through so many lumbar punctures, because we keep like running back and, clean slate again. Are we sure we're not missing something? And every time it's coming back normal. The pressures are normal. So I would definitely recommend that you speak to a local headache specialist so they can get the features of the headache and get a sense if this actually fits a migraine disorder. And you happen to have two somewhat common disorders, a migraine disorder, and then you're 2% of the normal population who have optic disc Drusen. So I hope that answers some of your questions about headaches and optic disc Drusen. But as of now, I don't think that they're related, although I would say that this is a common complaint that we do get.
I think in terms of the headache angle, there's definitely the likelihood that they synergize. And I think the most important question about the headache is whether this is related to increased brain pressure or not. And the beauty of the advances in eye imaging is that we think we have a better idea how to estimate or how to guess relatively more accurately without doing a lumbar puncture all the time, because lumbar puncture really isn't always the answer. The measurements may be more likely a little elevated in a kid or normal some of the time, and so what do you do then? So I just shared in the chat a review article that we published at the end of last year that has two nice tables that summarizes, and it's free. It summarizes the key features that the neuro-ophthalmologists are using to look at patients in terms of somebody who have an elevation of the optic nerve head. What are the possibilities and what imaging or what tests could you do to distinguish them? And I think the way I think about the headache is they probably overlap and synergize, but it's important to think that it's not necessarily the chicken of the optic disc Drusen causing the egg, which is the headache. I hope I'm using that analogy correctly. But then, the chicken gives birth to an egg and then the egg becomes a chicken. It's complicated. So I think I fully agree with what Dr. Barrett said in terms of having a good headache specialist is important because it's actually maybe from a treatment standpoint easiest to think about it in parallel. So you let one doctor deal with the headache and you let another doctor deal with the vision.
And I have many patients that we sort of split that fine line, and we have two providers. So that's certainly the way that I think a lot of us also practice. So there's
just real quick, Dr. Sadoon just mentioned in chat, he doesn't know if headache and Drusen have any association, but he definitely wondered about the connection of the melanopsin containing retinal ganglion cells. So these are the ones that detect light. And whether these might be relatively spared in optic disc Drusen, therefore causing these patients to be more photophobic. Yeah, great thought, Alfredo.
Thanks, Alfredo. And then I know I brought this up with Kathleen Degree as well while we were planning this study about adding a headache kind of arm to the study, because as a pediatric neuro-ophthalmologist is what I get is like pretty much everybody coming in with pseudopapilledema, maybe having optic disc Drusen because they had a concern of headache, which is why it led them to the eye appointment. So still thinking about it. So I'm hoping one day we'll be able to put that all together for you guys to ultimately answer this question. There was a question, where was it?
So,
The cataracts. Do you want to comment on that one, Joyce?
so you mean the one from Terry?
Yeah,
Okay.
with the cataracts.
So Terry, I don't know if you want to be unmuted to speak, but I'm happy to read your comment for you, because I know this is something that you've been struggling with. You've just been promoted to a panelist, so if you want to, you could unmute or unmask yourself. So your question is regarding cataracts. So this is something that some of us or all of us will inevitably have to deal with, and your doctors have advised you not to consider cataract surgery until the vision has deteriorated to the point where you have nothing to lose. Yikes. So you're hoping that we would have some smart things to say in terms of cataract surgery and optic disc Drusen. So Dr. Moss, I'm not sure if she's still connected, but we could certainly, she is.
Yeah, and she appears.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so I'll let Dr. Moss discuss first, and I definitely have some thoughts too.
What did you want me to discuss?
Oh, he's wondering about your wisdom in terms of cataract surgery and optic disc Drusen.
Yeah, I think that's such a tricky situation. I mean, in neuro-ophthalmology, a lot of times we have patients for whom cataract surgery might be slightly higher risk, because they're monocular or different things. I mean, in theory, Drusen may, having elevated intraocular pressure associated with cataract surgery might theoretically increase risk of vision loss, but we don't know for sure. And so I think it just changes the risk benefit balance a little bit, so that, perhaps if you don't have Drusen, you may have a pretty low threshold to go get your cataracts done. But if you do have Drusen, you just might want to think a little more carefully about whether there's really great benefit to be had from the surgery at this time or not.
Yeah, hi. I didn't realize that I was unmuted, so I do have a couple of other thoughts that I could share. I have had NAION in one eye. I'm 73 years old. When the first NAION occurred, I consulted with doctors at Tufts, and I've since consulted with doctors at Johns Hopkins, and I'm now in connection with some doctors at Mass Eye and Ear. I'm trying to assemble a team of doctors with different types of expertise, ischemia for one, complex optic surgery another. I'll be going through a series of appointments this summer leading up to October for the purpose of deciding the possibility, the potential for having cataract surgery now, because the remaining good eye is getting worse and worse, as you can imagine, because of the progression of the cataract. When it first happened, all the doctors told me that the possibility of triggering a second NAION in the other eye was better than 50%. I'm seeing a number of different doctors, but I have what I call a normal ophthalmologist. And after 3 years of fairly stable field vision tests, he has said, maybe it's time to consider doing the cataract surgery, because he knows now how much that I'm struggling with it. Now that was good, but that's when I reached out to Mass Eye and Ear to get a second opinion, because, in my ophthalmologist's thoughts, the probability of success is now better than 90%, possibly because of the stability of the condition, as opposed to less than 50% 3 years ago or 3+ years ago when the NAION occurred.
And I think the problem with all of this, and I can hear the challenge in your voice as you're talking about this percent and that percent, is that all of these opinions, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, are all opinions. And even if, we were that advanced in our knowledge of Drusen, which we aren't, to know what the actual percentages are on a population basis, we wouldn't be able to drill it down for you individually. And so ultimately, the role of all of us in the medical field is to help give our opinions, but it puts you in the very difficult place of having to integrate all of those, and only you really know what the personal benefit is to you. what is the personal benefit of if the surgery goes well and gets your vision to its best potential? And what is the personal, detriment to you if it does provoke another NAION? And then it's kind of a soul searching to you to figure out how comfortable you are with those risks.
Right. And that soul searching has been going on for some time.
I can hear it in your voice.
Likely continue for quite a while. So anyway, that's my current situation. And hopefully the doctors at Mass Eye and Ear can get together and just give me the honest truth, their honest opinion, and then I'll make a decision going forward.
Well, Terry, thank you for sharing this. There's actually now recent literature on cataract surgery and ischemic optic neuropathy. And I really think that our mission is to save someone like you, right? I mean, you have it perfectly timed, and we could check off every single box. And certainly Mass Eye and Ear, they have a lot of nice toys in terms of imaging, like we do. And so certainly happy to review anything and help if we can. I have a special interest in ischemic optic neuropathy that actually predated my interest in optic disc Drusen. I think of them as one, but both diseases that desperately need some good research. And so, I hope we'll be able to help you in this journey.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. I'll reach out to you separately, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, and thank you again for having the seminar. I am participating online in a number of different groups, Facebook groups, social media groups dealing with optic disc Drusen. And if you haven't checked out Facebook, for example, there are a couple of groups there. There are a lot of people that are newly diagnosed, and I kind of help them get through the process. A lot of them are extremely frightened at the diagnosis, and I try to give them the statistics, saying that chances are you won't end up like me. But what I urged them to do was to do their homework and also to participate in today's forum, and I hopefully a lot of them did.
Terrific. Yeah, thank you, Terry. I think for people who want to reach us directly, I just posted our email, which is opticdiscdrusen@stanford.edu, or our website. So you're welcome to reach out to us directly. Thank you, everybody, all the speakers and all the people who share and posted a lot of great comments.
Thanks again, everybody, and special thank you to our families, Tracy and to Tammy, for joining us today. That was really nice to have some personal connection to what we're doing and trying for. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and to Anita and Terry, it's great to see you guys again. And I think Wayne, we didn't get to chat, but it was nice to see you as part of the attendee.